This is Architecture Design Studio, and I'm your host Wong. In January, we had a site visit to Pura Tanjung Sabtu, which was a dilapidated royal homestay that was built in the 1950s. And we were tasked to draw inspiration from the site to be applied to our skin design, which is Project 2, Creating an Architectural Skin. With that, I had taken an interest in Singora clay tiles, because who knew that Singora clay tiles would actually be so delicate and symmetrical while being a part of the whole roof itself. I was intrigued by how each individual tile is layered beside one another, and it creates a beautiful pattern to go along with the whole facade. And at that time, ceramics was something that I had been researching on for Project 1. And through my research, I have found out that lotus motifs have been interconnected with ceramics. And this had sparked my idea because lotus flowers and Singora tiles do actually have a lot in common. The major feature of it is that both of these elements have layering properties, and I figured that it would go pretty well with Singora clay tiles. As I mentioned, Singora clay tiles are actually quite thin, and so as the petals of a lotus flower. And therefore, I had designed a form for an individual clay tile that fuses both of the intricate properties of Singora clay tiles and lotus flowers. What I had in mind for my architectural skin was the positioning of Singora clay tiles in a way that it forms a facade that was symmetrical and pleasing to look at the same time. And with the design form of the individual clay tile, I have applied the layering style of the Singora clay tiles to be the arrangement of the active skin. For the active skin that I had in mind, it is quite similar to the skin on the Al Baha Towers in United Arab Emirates, where the active skin will close when there is harsh desert sunlight and it will open when it is cloudy. So to apply this property on my skin, each individual tile will be bolted to a grid so that each row can pivot in the same speed. There is a house in Petaling Jaya which features a clay skin that is almost similar to mine. However, this clay skin is able to swivel freely through wind movement. This skin is installed vertically via a steel rod that covers the whole facade of the house. Although this skin is considered as a passive skin because it requires wind movement to move, while my skin in design requires winches to pull each row of the individual tiles upwards and downwards. And with that, we move on to the sculpting process. I made the lotus motif tiles with air dry clay, and because I only had one mold, it took quite a long time to finish. And this is the digital model of my skin. And that wraps up Project 2 Architectural Skin. Now, we move on to Project 3, Crafting Pura Tanjung Sabtu, which is the final project in Design Studio 4, which we were required to repurpose Pura Tanjung Sabtu as a cultural center. And with my lotus motif architectural skin in mind, Pura Tanjung Sabtu would be wonderful as a ceramic craft center. This craft center would serve to promote awareness upon the dying craft, which is ceramics. And it would be a center which students can learn and practice from experienced ceramicists. And furthermore, this would be a great opportunity to restore its name and pride as one of Kuala Terengganu's attractions. These are some of my initial concepts. The first one is based on a similar architectural language to Pura Tanjung Sabtu. This concept is to create a space that would actually blend in with the facade and act like one whole structure. The second concept that I had was to create a strong contrast against the traditional silhouette of Pura Tanjung Sabtu. And with that, I went with cubism. The third concept I had in mind was a canopy-like structure, similar to the one in Clarke Quay, Singapore. This canopy-like structure would establish the perception of a larger space. And with that, I went with the canopy-like structure because I wanted to create a main atrium in the center courtyard of Pura Tanjung Sabtu. And that place would house a few main activities there. My initial forms for the ceramic courtyard as well as the student lodging are all based on Singora clay tiles and lotus motifs. That also includes the similar properties which Singora clay tiles and lotus motifs share, which are their layers. And this is the case study that I had found, which is a recreation and training cultural center in Caracas, Venezuela. This particular building has that space that captures the double volume space which I wanted to portray in the ceramic courtyard. And since the ceramic courtyard will be a semi-open structure, the steel frame of this cultural center would actually be quite similar to that I had in mind for the construction of the ceramic courtyard. This is the form development of two of the buildings, mainly the ceramic courtyard and the student lodging. For the form of the ceramic courtyard, it will be somewhat similar to the cultural center case study, but however, more layers are to be added, so to create an encapsulating double volume space within the ceramic courtyard. However, for the student lodging, I went with the concept somewhat similar of Pura Tanjung Sabtu, whereby individual buildings are connected with walkways. I have created a bubble diagram which explains the relationship of all the spaces involved. And because this is a ceramic cultural center, of course it will have a kiln area for pottery firing, an air drying area, sculpting center, a gallery showcase, as well as a craft shop, besides the ceramic courtyard being the main space. And for the other supplementary spaces, I've included sleeping quarters for both students and artisans alike, as well as their own respective pottery studios. The ceramic courtyard will no doubt be the core space of the whole project, and just like a lotus flower which has petals that spread out of its core, the ceramic courtyard does the same to all the other spaces as well. And with that, I've allocated each activity to its respective space. This is done so that all of the spaces next to each other are related in any way, shape or form. The same goes to the first floor as well. For the spatial properties of the ground floor, most of the spaces would be public spaces, and only a few other spaces are considered as semi-public space. For the first floor, however, most of the spaces would be private spaces, with a few exceptions as semi-public spaces. The messing model that I had made would be the basic form of how both the student lodging and the ceramic courtyard would look like. And for the attachment of my Project 2 architectural skin, it will be on the bottom two layers of the ceramic courtyard and two of the sides of each student lodging. The student lodging features 4 pentagonal plans that houses the students' workshop and their sleeping quarters. Then 4 of these individual buildings will be linked up with a walkway similar to that of Pura Tanjung Sabtu. And in the center of it all would be the communal spaces shared by the students. The ceramic courtyard features a double volume space with a mezzanine floor that consists of 4 progressive layers made out of steel beams and supported by slanted columns. As mentioned earlier, the bottom 2 layers will be occupied with my architectural skin. The third layer will be a diffusing layer where polycarbonate will be used to allow natural sunlight to enter the space. And for the fourth most layer, it will be a modification of Singora tile roof, where the standard Singora clay tiles will be removed and will be switched to my lotus motif clay tile. And then this is the full-length conceptual section, which consists of the existing building, that is Pura Tanjung Sabtu, and the 2 new additions. This is the schedule of program which explains what activities would take place in each respective space. The ceramic courtyard, being as a double volume space, would house a few activities. One of the activities is the first-hand experience of digging and searching for clay. Although this is done so in an artificial environment, but it provides the experience of getting your hands dirty and actually searching for clay. And of course, there would be a gathering space for all of the participants involved to analyze the clay that they have dug up. Also included is the food court, as well as a storage for all of the digging equipment, which is underneath the mezzanine floor. And then this is the schedule of program for the first floor, where each space would also house its respective activity. Next would be the 3D model of Pura Tanjung Sabtu and the 2 new additions. This is the full perspective of Pura Tanjung Sabtu when viewed in front. This is the angle when it is viewed from the student lodging. This is the bird's eye view of Pura Tanjung Sabtu with the 2 new additions. This is a better view of the ceramic courtyard, and its form is clearly defined from this angle. An axonometric section of Pura Tanjung Sabtu and both the 2 new additions. This is the topmost layer of ceramic courtyard. As mentioned earlier, it uses the lotus motif clay roof tiles that will be the facade of the whole 4th layer. And this is the lotus motif active skin when viewed from the ground. This one in particular is the ceramic courtyard, where it features 2 different angles as opposed to only one for the student lodging. And these are some of the interior views of the main atrium in the ceramic courtyard. This is the mezzanine floor of the courtyard, which houses a small library as well as a co-working space. The student lodging, which houses the students' personal pottery studio, and above it is their own sleeping quarters. Moving on to all of the drawings of Pura Tanjung Sabtu and the ceramic additions. That is all for my design. Thank you for watching.